The countryside stretched endlessly before her as Sophia Carter drove down the winding road leading to Crestwood. The tall oak trees lining the path swayed gently in the summer breeze, but their tranquility did little to soothe the turmoil in her heart. Her black sedan cut through the familiar landscape like a shadow, returning to claim what was lost. It had been 15 years since Sophia had left Crestwood, vowing never to return. The bustling streets of New York had become her sanctuary, a place where she could bury the betrayal that had shattered her once ideal life. But now, here she was, pulled back by her grandmother's will and the prospect of answers long buried under the weight of time. The town sign appeared on the horizon, faded yet unchanged. Crestwood, population 4,768. As she passed, memories clawed their way to the surface. The laughter she once shared with Daniel Reed, the promises whispered beneath moonlit skies, and the ultimate betrayal that had left her heart hollow. Sophia tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She'd built herself into a successful attorney, a woman who took no nonsense from anyone. Yet returning here felt like peeling back a scab on an old wound. Her grandmother's estate loomed ahead, a grand Victorian mansion that stood as a testament to her family's legacy and her unresolved past. As she pulled into the driveway, the sight of the house made her chest tighten. The sprawling gardens, once meticulously maintained, now showed signs of neglect. Vines crept along the columns of the wraparound porch, and the shutters hung askew. Sophia sighed and stepped out of the car, the heels of her pumps clicking against the cracked stone pathway. "Miss Carter," a familiar voice called. Mrs. Hargrove, the estate's longtime caretaker, hurried out to greet her. Her face was lined with age, but still held the warmth Sophia remembered from her childhood. "Mrs. Hargrove," Sophia said, forcing a smile. "It's been a long time." "Too long," the older woman replied, her gaze softening. "Your grandmother would have been so happy to see you here." Would she? Sophia wondered but said nothing. Her grandmother's will had been firm. Sophia must stay in Crestwood for 3 months to inherit the estate. It was an ultimatum she hadn't expected from the woman who had been her refuge after her parents' death. Inside, the house smelled of dust and nostalgia. The grand staircase rose before her, its banister polished to a shine. Sophia ran her fingers over the wood, memories of sliding down it as a child flooding back. But the warmth of those moments was quickly overshadowed by the ghosts that still lingered. Later that evening, as she unpacked in the room she had once called her own, a knock at the door startled her. Mrs. Hargrove entered, holding a weathered envelope. "This came for you, Miss Carter," she said, her tone hesitant. It was slipped under the front door. Sophia frowned and took the envelope, her name scrawled on it in an unsteady hand. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the words hastily written. "What you lost isn't what it seems. Seek the truth before it's too late." Her pulse quickened as she reread the note. The cryptic message sent a chill down her spine, reigniting the questions she thought she had buried. What could it mean? And who had sent it? The next day, she ventured into town. Crestwood hadn't changed much in her absence. The same quaint shops lined Main Street, their painted signs slightly more weathered. But as she walked, she felt the weight of curious stares. Whispers followed her, remnants of the scandal that had driven her away. Then, she saw him. Daniel Reed stood outside the bakery, his tall frame unmistakable even from a distance. His hair was flecked with gray, but his piercing blue eyes still held the same intensity that had once captivated her. And next to him was a little girl, her dark curls bouncing as she skipped beside him. Sophia froze, her breath catching. The child's laughter carried on the breeze, piercing through the fog of her thoughts. Her heart pounded as the girl turned, revealing a face that was hauntingly familiar. The resemblance was undeniable. Those almond-shaped eyes, that delicate chin. It was like looking into a mirror of her own childhood. Daniel's gaze met hers then, and his expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable. He took a step toward her, the girl clutching his hand, oblivious to the tension crackling between them. "Sophia," he said, his voice low and cautious. "You're back." She struggled to find words, her mind racing with questions she wasn't ready to ask. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. She didn't look back, but she could feel his eyes on her. That night, she sat in the parlor of the estate, staring at the note on the coffee table. Her heart warred with her mind, each beating out a different rhythm. The child's face was etched into her thoughts, along with the note's ominous warning. What you lost isn't what it seems. Sophia's hands curled into fists. She had returned to Crestwood for answers, and it seemed they wouldn't be easy to uncover. But one thing was certain. The past she had tried so hard to escape was waiting for her here, ready to unravel at the slightest tug. And she wasn't sure she was prepared for the truth. The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window, but the peaceful melody did little to quell the storm brewing inside her. The note from the night before sat on the bedside table, its cryptic message taunting her. She couldn't shake the image of the little girl from her mind. Her resemblance was uncanny, a mirror to Sophia's own childhood. But the possibility, the implications, were too staggering to confront. Not yet. Over breakfast, Mrs. Hargrove's presence was a steadying force. The older woman bustled about the kitchen, pouring tea and setting out plates of fresh scones. "The town hasn't changed much," Sophia commented, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Hargrove gave her a knowing smile. "The people, however, remember everything. You'll be the talk of Crestwood for weeks." Sophia's stomach tightened at the thought. She had no intention of becoming the center of gossip, but she needed answers, and that meant stepping into the lion's den. By mid-morning, she found herself at the local library, hoping to lose herself in the quiet rows of books while she sorted her thoughts. The librarian, a soft-spoken man named Harold, greeted her warmly. "Miss Carter, it's been years. What brings you back?" Sophia hesitated. "Family matters." Harold's smile faltered, but he didn't press further. As she wandered through the aisles, her fingers grazing the spines of books, Sophia stumbled upon a section she hadn't expected: town records. Drawn by curiosity, she began leafing through old files and news clippings, her breath catching as she stumbled upon a familiar name. Reed family scandal. Local heiress missing after mysterious split. The headline was dated 5 years ago, shortly after Sophia had last heard whispers of Daniel and Olivia. The accompanying photo showed Daniel, stoic and composed, alongside Olivia, whose eyes carried a strange mix of fear and defiance. The article detailed the unraveling of their marriage, citing rumors of financial troubles and Olivia's sudden departure. But it was the final sentence that made Sophia's blood run cold. Local authorities declined to investigate, citing lack of evidence of foul play. "Find something interesting?" The voice startled her. Turning, she found herself face to face with a woman she didn't recognize. Though her sharp features and piercing gaze suggested she was someone who didn't miss much. "Just brushing up on local history," Sophia replied evenly, closing the file. The woman raised an eyebrow. "I'm Becca, Olivia's cousin." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't heard much about Olivia's family, and now here was someone who might hold a piece of the puzzle. "I'm sorry for what happened to her," Sophia said carefully. Becca's lips pressed into a thin line. "Are you? I'm surprised you even came back here." "You and Daniel," she trailed off, her meaning clear. "I don't know what you mean," Sophia replied, her voice sharper than she intended. "Don't play dumb," Becca snapped, stepping closer. "Everyone in this town knows what he did to Olivia, and to you. If you're smart, you'll stay far away from him." Sophia's mind whirled with questions, but before she could respond, Becca turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Left alone, Sophia clutched the file to her chest, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the town, Sophia returned to the estate. The cryptic note, the article, and Becca's warning created a storm of unease that wouldn't abate. She needed answers, but first, she needed to understand the full scope of the truth. That night, unable to sleep, she wandered the halls of the mansion. The portraits of her ancestors seemed to watch her as she passed, their painted expressions a mix of judgment and curiosity. In her grandmother's study, she found a desk drawer locked tight. The old brass key she'd found among her grandmother's belongings fit perfectly. Inside, she discovered an envelope labeled for Sophia. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter inside was written in her grandmother's familiar handwriting. "Dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, then you have returned to Crestwood. I have protected secrets far too long, and now it is time for you to learn the truth. Trust no one, especially Daniel. Start in the garden." Sophia's pulse quickened. The garden. Her grandmother's prized sanctuary. What could possibly be hidden there? The next morning, with the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, Sophia ventured outside. The rose bushes were overgrown but still beautiful, their thorns sharp as she pushed through them. Near the center of the garden, she found an old wooden box buried under the soil. Inside was a locket. Sophia opened it to reveal a picture of a baby with dark curls and wide, curious eyes. Ella's eyes. Sophia's breath caught. The pieces were beginning to align, but the picture they formed was far more dangerous than she'd imagined. Sophia sat on the estate's veranda, the weight of the locket pressing heavily in her palm. The image of the child within, Ella, or someone who could be her twin, was impossible to dismiss. Memories of her final days in Crestwood surged to the forefront, and with them came the searing pain of betrayal. She clutched the locket tightly as if the pressure alone might summon answers. Later that morning, she decided to confront Daniel. If anyone held the missing pieces, it was him. Gathering her courage, she strode down the overgrown garden path to the garage, where her car waited like a faithful steed. The drive to Daniel's farmhouse felt surreal. Crestwood's rolling fields and quiet streets passed in a blur until the modest house appeared on the horizon. Unlike her grandmother's grand estate, Daniel's property was quaint and understated. She parked by the driveway and marched to the front door, her heels clicking sharply against the stone path. Daniel answered after the second knock, his expression shifting from surprise to guardedness. His blue eyes, so piercing once, now carried the weight of years and secrets. "Sophia," he said, his voice measured. "This is unexpected." "We need to talk," she replied curtly. He hesitated, but stepped aside to let her in. The interior of the farmhouse was cozy but sparse, as if someone had erased all traces of personal history. Ella's toys were scattered across the living room, the only evidence of life beyond Daniel's stoic presence. Sophia wasted no time. "Who is Ella?" she demanded, holding up the locket. Daniel's jaw tightened, and he glanced away. "She's my daughter," he said simply. "No," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "She's mine, isn't she?" His gaze snapped back to hers, and for a moment, the mask of composure slipped. "You don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Daniel." Sophia's voice broke. "That locket belonged to Olivia, and that child has my face. If there's something you've been hiding, I need to know." Daniel sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicated," she shot back. For a long moment, he said nothing, the silence between them heavy and charged. Finally, he spoke. "After you left Crestwood, Olivia found out she was pregnant. She didn't know what to do. Your grandmother stepped in and helped her. She thought it was better for everyone if you didn't know." Sophia's stomach twisted. Why would she think that? Daniel looked her square in the eye. "Because you told her you didn't want children, Sophia. The night we fought, those were your exact words." The memory hit her like a freight train. That awful night, the shouting, the tears, her frustration with Crestwood, her yearning for a bigger life, and the careless, venomous words she'd thrown in the heat of the moment. "I never want to be stuck here with kids and regrets." Sophia's knees weakened, and she sank onto the nearest chair. "I didn't mean it," she whispered, more to herself than to Daniel. "Maybe not," Daniel said, his voice softer now, "but Olivia believed you did. She thought she was protecting Ella, and you." The anger in Sophia's chest boiled over. "So you both decided I didn't deserve to know my own child existed? You had no right." "It wasn't just our decision," Daniel said, his voice rising. "Your grandmother was part of it. She thought it would be better this way. She wanted to spare you from everything." Sophia's eyes burned with unshed tears. Her grandmother. The one person she had trusted implicitly had been part of the deception. Where is Olivia now? Sophia demanded. Why isn't she here? Daniel's expression darkened. She's gone. Gone where? She left Crestwood 5 years ago, he said, his voice flat. She couldn't handle it anymore. Sophia felt as though the floor had shifted beneath her. Olivia had left? The woman who had stolen Daniel, betrayed her, and kept her child a secret had simply vanished? None of it made sense. What aren't you telling me, Daniel? She asked, her voice a low tremor. He looked away again, his silence more damning than any words. Sophia stood abruptly. This isn't over. If you won't tell me the whole truth, I'll find it myself. Daniel reached for her arm, but she pulled away. Be careful, Sophia, he said. Sometimes the truth is more dangerous than the lies. She didn't look back as she left the farmhouse, her mind spinning with anger, betrayal, and the undeniable certainty that there was far more to this story than Daniel was willing to reveal. The locket in her pocket felt like a talisman, guiding her toward answers she wasn't sure she wanted but knew she needed to find. Sophia returned to the estate, her thoughts a chaotic storm. The weight of Daniel's words clung to her, each revelation cutting deeper into wounds she didn't realize were still raw. She needed clarity, but the truth seemed more elusive with every step she took. Her grandmother's study, her sanctuary as a child, beckoned her now, its locked drawers and hidden corners whispering promises of answers. She spent hours combing through old documents, letters, and journals, searching for anything that could untangle the web of secrets around Ella. Finally, tucked inside a leather-bound diary, she found a faded photograph. Her breath caught. It was of her grandmother, Olivia, and a baby, Ella. The image was dated 5 years ago, the year Olivia had vanished. The inscription on the back read, "To protect what matters most." The photograph reignited her determination. If Olivia had left, why had she done so without a word to anyone? And what had her grandmother been protecting? The next day, Sophia paid a visit to the family's lawyer, Mr. Finch, a meticulous man with decades of service to the Carters. His office was a maze of bookshelves and filing cabinets, the air thick with the scent of parchment and ink. Miss Carter. He greeted her warmly. To what do I owe this visit? I need information, Sophia said, her tone resolute, about my grandmother's will. Specifically, why Ella was mentioned as a beneficiary. Finch's expression flickered with unease. Ah, yes. That clause was unusual. Unusual how? He opened a file drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, placing it carefully on his desk. Your grandmother amended her will shortly before her death. She insisted on leaving a portion of her estate to Ella, specifying that the funds were for the child's education and care. Sophia frowned. Did she explain why? Not in detail, Finch admitted, but she was adamant. She said the child was, he hesitated, as if weighing his next words carefully, of great importance to the family. The ambiguity only fueled Sophia's frustration. Is there anything else? Finch hesitated again, then handed her a sealed letter. Your grandmother instructed me to give this to you if you ever asked about Ella. Sophia's hands trembled as she broke the seal. The letter was written in her grandmother's familiar script. Dearest Sophia, if you are reading this, it means you have begun to uncover the truths I tried to shield you from. Ella is more than she seems, and so is the story of how she came to be. Trust your instincts, but tread carefully. The past is a fragile thing, and the wrong move could shatter more than you realize. Start with the garden. It holds the first key. Sophia's heart raced. The garden. Again. Whatever her grandmother had buried there was more than sentimental. She thanked Finch quickly and drove back to the estate, her thoughts a whirlwind. Under the fading light of dusk, Sophia returned to the rose garden. Armed with a spade, she began to dig near the statue of an angel that marked her grandmother's favorite spot. The earth was soft, as though it had been disturbed not long ago. Her spade struck something solid. Clearing the dirt away, she uncovered a metal box, its surface weathered but intact. With trembling hands, she pried it open. Inside, she found legal documents, photographs, and a birth certificate. The certificate bore Ella's name, but the line for the mother's name read, Sophia Carter. Sophia's knees gave out, and she sat in the dirt, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The implications were staggering. Had she been a mother without knowing it? How could such a monumental truth have been kept from her? Among the papers was a handwritten note from Olivia. Sophia, I hope you never have to read this, but if you do, it means the burden of the truth has fallen to you. Ella is yours. I carried her, yes, but she is yours in every way that matters. Your grandmother believed you weren't ready to be a mother then, but I always hoped you'd have the chance to know her, protect her, love her. She needs you now, more than ever. Tears blurred Sophia's vision. She clutched the note to her chest, a mix of anger, grief, and a fierce determination surging within her. Whatever had happened in the past, whatever lies had been told, one thing was clear now. Ella was her daughter, and Sophia would do whatever it took to protect her. Sophia couldn't sleep. The revelations from the garden and Olivia's note looped endlessly in her mind. She stared at the ceiling of her bedroom, her grandmother's estate now a labyrinth of secrets instead of a sanctuary. At dawn, she resolved to confront Daniel again, knowing he held the missing pieces to this cruel puzzle. Arriving at his farmhouse, Sophia didn't bother with pleasantries. She stormed up the front steps and banged on the door until Daniel opened it, his face pale and drawn. I found the box, she said coldly, holding up the documents. And I found the birth certificate. Ella is my daughter, isn't she? Daniel's shoulders sagged, and he stepped aside to let her in. The living room was eerily silent, save for the faint creak of floorboards beneath Sophia's heels. Ella is yours, Daniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But it's not as simple as you think. Not as simple? Sophia snapped. You lied to me, Daniel. You stole my child and let me live for years believing I was nothing but collateral damage in your and Olivia's twisted games. It wasn't a game, Daniel shot back, his voice suddenly sharp. It was survival. Do you think Olivia and I wanted this? That your grandmother wanted this? Sophia's anger flared. Don't you dare bring her into this. She was part of your cover-up, wasn't she? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. You don't understand. Olivia didn't have a choice. She carried Ella because your pregnancy would have endangered you. Sophia blinked, thrown off balance. What are you talking about? After the accident, Daniel explained, the doctors told your grandmother that you couldn't handle the pregnancy. It could have killed you. Olivia volunteered to carry the baby. It was the only way to save you both. Sophia staggered back a step, her mind racing. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why was I left in the dark? Because you wouldn't have stayed, Daniel said bitterly. You hated this town. You wanted out so badly. And after everything you said the night you left, Olivia and your grandmother thought it was best to let you go, to let you live your life. Sophia's chest tightened. The memory of that night haunted her. The fight, the cruel words she had hurled at Daniel, her desperation to escape Crestwood and its stifling grasp. But to learn that her own child had been kept from her in the aftermath? It was too much. And Olivia? She demanded. Why did she leave? Why didn't she stay for Ella? Daniel hesitated. She couldn't handle it anymore. The guilt, the lies. She left Crestwood to start over, but I stayed for Ella. I thought it was the least I could do. Sophia stared at him, her emotions a chaotic swirl of rage, sorrow, and confusion. And you thought I didn't deserve to know? To have a say in my own daughter's life? Daniel met her gaze, his voice raw. I thought you deserved to be free, but now I see that was wrong. I see how much I've hurt you. And Ella. The weight of his words settled over the room, suffocating in its heaviness. Sophia turned away, her eyes landing on a photograph of Ella on the mantel. Her daughter, her little girl. There's more, Daniel said hesitantly. Sophia whipped around. More? What else could there possibly be? Your grandmother didn't trust Olivia, he confessed. She suspected Olivia had ulterior motives for volunteering, that she wanted something more than to help. Sophia's heart pounded. What are you saying? Olivia forged documents, Daniel revealed. Financial agreements, loans, all under the Carter estate's name. Your grandmother discovered it after Ella was born and threatened to expose her. That's why Olivia left. She couldn't face the consequences. Sophia's knees weakened, and she sank into the nearest chair. Her mind reeled at the revelation. Olivia's disappearance wasn't just guilt. It was self-preservation. And now, it all made sense. The missing money, the strained relationships, her grandmother's cryptic warnings. "I'm going to fix this," Sophia said firmly, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. "For Ella. For my grandmother. For everything you and Olivia took from me." Daniel's eyes darkened. "Be careful, Sophia. The truth isn't always what it seems." Sophia stood, her determination unshakable. "Neither am I." As she left the farmhouse, a plan began to form. She would dig deeper into Olivia's betrayal, expose the lies that had stolen years from her and Ella, and reclaim what was hers. Whatever it took, Sophia would ensure the web of lies unraveled for good. Sophia wasted no time. Back at the estate, she spread the documents she had recovered across her grandmother's desk. The evidence of Olivia's forgeries was damning, but it wasn't enough. She needed more proof to unravel the entire conspiracy and reclaim what had been taken from her. For that, she needed help, and she knew exactly who to ask. The following morning, Sophia drove to Crestwood's old diner. Becca, Olivia's sharp-tongued cousin, was sitting in the corner booth, sipping coffee. Sophia's entrance caught her attention immediately, and her expression shifted to one of wary curiosity. "Well, well," Becca drawled, setting down her mug. "The prodigal daughter returns again. What do you want now?" "Answers," Sophia replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "And I think you have them." Becca raised an eyebrow. "I don't owe you anything." "Maybe not," Sophia said, leaning forward. "But I'm willing to bet you'd love to see Olivia's lies come to light. Or are you still loyal to her after everything she did to this town?" The jab landed. Becca's lips tightened, and her fingers curled around the edge of her mug. "What are you talking about?" she asked cautiously. Sophia placed a copy of one of the forged documents on the table. Becca's eyes scanned it, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. She forged your grandmother's signature?" Becca whispered. "Dozens of times," Sophia confirmed. "She drained estate funds for years. And when my grandmother found out, Olivia vanished." Becca's jaw clenched. "I knew she wasn't innocent, but this is worse than I thought." "I need more," Sophia pressed. "I need proof that she did this knowingly, that it wasn't some mistake. Do you have anything that could help?" Becca hesitated, her eyes darting around the diner. Finally, she nodded. "I might, but it'll cost you." "Cost me?" Sophia scoffed. "You think I'm going to pay you to do the right thing?" Becca smirked. "Not money, sweetheart. I want protection. If Olivia finds out I helped you, she'll make my life hell." Sophia's gaze hardened. "You have my word. Now, what do you have?" Becca reached into her bag and pulled out a worn journal. "This belonged to Olivia. She left it at my place years ago and never came back for it. I haven't read much, but there are entries about your family and other things." Sophia's fingers trembled as she took the journal. "Thank you." Becca leaned back, her smirk returning. "Don't thank me yet. You're playing with fire, Sophia. Olivia's not the type to stay gone forever." Sophia didn't respond. She left the diner, clutching the journal like a lifeline. Back at the estate, she opened it and began to read. The entries were erratic, filled with Olivia's scrawled handwriting, but one passage caught her eye. "I never wanted to hurt Sophia, but Eleanor forced my hand. She threatened to destroy me if I didn't leave. The money was mine by right. She owed me for everything. I just wanted a better life for myself, for Ella. But now I'm in too deep. If Sophia ever finds out the truth, she'll never forgive me." Sophia's breath caught. The journal confirmed Olivia's guilt, but it also hinted at something deeper. What had Olivia meant by "owed me for everything"? What debt had her grandmother been repaying? As she turned the pages, a folded letter slipped out. It was addressed to Daniel in Olivia's handwriting. Sophia unfolded it carefully, her pulse quickening as she read. "Daniel, you promised me this would be easy, that no one would get hurt. But Eleanor's threats are getting worse, and I'm starting to think you're not telling me everything. If she finds out about the baby, if Sophia finds out, everything will fall apart. I can't keep pretending this is for the greater good. I need answers, Daniel, or I'm gone." Sophia's hands shook. The letter was dated just days before Olivia's disappearance. She clenched her fists, her anger boiling over. Daniel had lied to her again. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from Becca. "I just remembered. Olivia mentioned meeting Daniel at the old factory the night she left. You might find something there." Sophia's resolve hardened. She grabbed her coat and the journal, ready to uncover the final pieces of this twisted puzzle. If Daniel thought he could manipulate her again, he was in for a rude awakening. The drive to the old factory was fraught with tension, the sun setting behind Sophia as she navigated Crestwood's deserted roads. The factory loomed ahead like a monolith, its rusting frame a relic of the town's forgotten past. Becca's text played on a loop in her mind. If Olivia and Daniel had met here the night Olivia disappeared, this could be the key to everything. Sophia parked her car at the edge of the lot, her headlights cutting through the encroaching darkness. The factory's shattered windows and sagging roof gave it an ominous air. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the flashlight she'd brought, before stepping out into the chill of the evening. The interior of the factory was a maze of rusted machinery and collapsed beams, the air thick with the scent of decay. Sophia's footsteps echoed as she ventured deeper, the beam of her flashlight sweeping across the shadows. She stopped abruptly when the light caught something on the ground, a leather-bound planner, dusty but intact. Picking it up, she flipped through the pages. It belonged to Olivia, the entries scrawled in her familiar handwriting. The last dated page read, "Daniel is hiding something. I can feel it. If I confront him tonight, I need leverage. I've hidden the documents in the usual place. If he tries to deny it, I'll show him everything. Sophia deserves the truth, even if it costs me everything." The entry ended abruptly. The ink smeared as if written in haste. Sophia's heart pounded. The usual place? She racked her brain, trying to decipher Olivia's cryptic note. Then it hit her. The storage lockers behind the factory. They had once been used to keep tools, but as kids, she and Olivia had stashed secrets there, imagining they were spies. She hurried to the lockers, her flashlight bouncing against the crumbling walls. Most of the doors hung open, their contents long since scavenged. But one locker, near the end of the row, was still locked, its metal surface scratched and dented. Sophia's stomach twisted. This had to be it. Using a wrench she'd found nearby, she pried the lock open with a sharp crack. Inside was a waterproof envelope. She tore it open, her breath hitching as she unfolded the papers within. Bank statements, forged contracts, letters implicating Daniel and orchestrating the entire scheme. From the forged documents to manipulating Olivia and hiding Ella's true parentage. The final piece was a photograph. Daniel and Olivia standing close, their faces tense, as they handed a crying baby to an older woman. Sophia staggered back. The woman in the photograph was her grandmother. Before she could process the enormity of what she'd found, a sound behind her made her spin around. Daniel stood in the shadows, his face unreadable. "I knew you'd come here," he said, stepping closer. "You never could leave things alone." Sophia held up the documents, her voice trembling with fury. "You lied to me, Daniel. About everything. Olivia's disappearance, Ella, my grandmother, all of it. You used all of us to cover your tracks." Daniel's expression darkened. "You don't understand what was at stake. Olivia was out of control. Your grandmother, she threatened to destroy everything I'd built. I had no choice." "No choice?" Sophia snapped. "You stole my daughter. You ruined Olivia's life. You manipulated my family. Don't you dare justify this as necessity." Daniel's gaze turned cold. "What are you going to do, Sophia? Turn me in? Tell the town? No one will believe you. They'll see this as you trying to tarnish my reputation." Sophia's grip on the papers tightened. "You're wrong. I have proof, and I'm not afraid of you." Daniel stepped closer, his voice a low threat. "Careful, Sophia. People who dig too deep tend to get buried." Sophia refused to back down. Not this time, Daniel. This time, you're the one who's going to pay. Their standoff was interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up outside. Flashlights danced through the broken windows, followed by the unmistakable voice of Becca. Sophia? You in here? Daniel's jaw clenched. You brought backup? Sophia smiled grimly. You're not as untouchable as you think. Becca appeared, flanked by 2 local officers. Her smirk widened when she saw Daniel. Guess your charm's finally worn off, huh? The officers approached, and Sophia handed them the documents. This should be enough to prove everything, she said, her voice steady. He's been lying to all of us for years. Daniel glared at her as the officers cuffed him. You think this changes anything? He growled. You have no idea what you've started. Sophia watched as they led him away, her heart pounding with a mix of triumph and unease. She turned to Becca, who crossed her arms with a smug grin. Told you I had your back, Becca said. Sophia managed a small smile. Thanks. I couldn't have done this without you. As they left the factory, Sophia clutched the documents to her chest. She had uncovered the truth and taken the first step toward justice. But Daniel's parting words echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder that the battle wasn't over yet. The following morning, Sophia stood in the Crestwood police station, watching through the glass as Daniel sat handcuffed in the interrogation room. His face was stoic, his eyes cold, as if daring anyone to challenge him. Despite the pile of evidence she had provided, she knew Daniel wouldn't give up without a fight. Becca leaned against the wall beside her, arms crossed. He's not going to crack easily, she said. Men like him always think they're untouchable. Sophia nodded, the weight of exhaustion pressing heavily on her. He doesn't need to crack. The documents speak for themselves. As if on cue, Detective Monroe, a seasoned officer with a no-nonsense demeanor, approached them. The evidence is solid, he said, flipping through the folder. Bank fraud, forgery, conspiracy. It's enough to press charges. But if we're going to make it stick, we need a motive. Something to explain why he went to such lengths. Sophia hesitated, her mind replaying the events of the past weeks. The forgeries, the manipulation, the disappearance of Olivia. All of it pointed to a tangled web of greed and desperation. He was trying to protect himself, she said finally. My grandmother threatened to expose him, and Olivia was a liability. He thought he could control everything. Monroe studied her carefully. What about Olivia? Any idea where she is now? Sophia shook her head. She's the last loose end. If we can find her, she can corroborate everything. Becca snorted. Good luck with that. Olivia always had a talent for vanishing when things got tough. Before Sophia could respond, Monroe's phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer, leaving the 2 women in tense silence. Becca broke it first, her voice unusually subdued. You did good, you know, standing up to him like that. Sophia managed a faint smile. It doesn't feel like enough. Not yet. Monroe returned, his expression grim. That was Hartford PD. They think they found Olivia. Sophia's heart leapt. Where? An abandoned motel on the outskirts of town. She checked in under a fake name a few days ago. Is she okay? Sophia asked, dread coiling in her stomach. They're not sure, Monroe admitted. But if she's there, she might be ready to talk. Sophia didn't waste a moment. She insisted on accompanying Monroe to the motel, despite his protests. Becca opted to stay behind, muttering something about not wanting to deal with Olivia's drama. The drive to the motel was a blur. Sophia's thoughts raced as she tried to imagine what Olivia might reveal. Was she hiding out of fear, or was she complicit in Daniel's schemes all along? The truth felt tantalizingly close yet agonizingly out of reach. The motel was a dismal sight, its faded neon sign flickering against the gray sky. Monroe led the way, his hand hovering near his holstered weapon as they approached the room number Hartford PD had provided. He knocked firmly. Olivia Lawrence? This is Detective Monroe. We need to speak with you. For a long moment, there was no response. Then, faintly, the sound of shuffling inside. The door creaked open, revealing Olivia, pale and disheveled, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and recognition. Sophia! she whispered, her voice cracking. You found me. Sophia stepped forward, her emotions a chaotic swirl. We need answers, Olivia. About Daniel, about Ella, about everything. Olivia's shoulders sagged, and she gestured for them to come inside. The room was sparse, the air heavy with the scent of mildew. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as she gripped a crumpled tissue. I didn't know where else to go, she admitted. Daniel, he threatened me, said if I didn't disappear, he'd make sure I never saw Ella again. Monroe interjected, his tone firm. Why did he threaten you? What leverage did he have? Olivia hesitated, glancing at Sophia. Because I knew the truth. About Ella, about the forgeries, about everything he did to your family. And I let it happen. Sophia's breath hitched. You let it happen? Why? Tears streamed down Olivia's face. Because I thought I was protecting you. Daniel convinced me that if you knew the truth, it would destroy you. He said you'd never forgive me. Sophia's anger flared, but she forced herself to stay calm. What truth, Olivia? What aren't you telling me? Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out a worn envelope. This, she said, handing it to Sophia. It's a letter from Eleanor. She gave it to me before she died. She wanted you to have it, but I was too much of a coward to deliver it. Sophia opened the envelope with trembling hands. The letter inside was written in her grandmother's elegant handwriting. Dearest Sophia, if you are reading this, it means the truth has finally found its way to you. I made mistakes, terrible ones, in trying to protect our family. Daniel's greed and Olivia's desperation were the results of my failings. But know this, Ella was always meant to be yours. She is your greatest legacy. Fight for her, and never let anyone take her from you. Tears blurred Sophia's vision as she finished the letter. She looked up at Olivia, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I'll fight for her, but you need to help me finish this. Olivia nodded, her expression resolute. I will. It's time to make things right. The chill in the air matched the cold resolve in Sophia's heart. The letter from Eleanor had reignited a fire within her. It wasn't just about exposing Daniel anymore. It was about reclaiming the life that had been stolen from her and protecting Ella from the fallout of his deception. With Olivia by her side, the final pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. Sophia and Olivia met with Detective Monroe the next morning. Olivia, though still visibly shaken, spoke with determination as she detailed Daniel's manipulations. She explained how he had orchestrated the forgeries and convinced her to act as Ella's mother to keep Sophia unaware of the truth. Monroe recorded every word, his expression grim but focused. Is there anything else you can give us? Monroe asked, leaning forward. Anything that ties Daniel directly to Eleanor's death? Olivia's face fell, guilt clouding her features. I don't have proof, she admitted, but I overheard him arguing with her the night she died. She threatened to expose him, and he said she'd regret it. Sophia clenched her fists. That's enough to show intent. We need to push him harder. Monroe nodded. We've got him on fraud and conspiracy. If we can tie him to Eleanor's death, it'll seal the case. Sophia turned to Olivia. You need to testify. Everything you know, everything you've seen. It's the only way to stop him. Olivia hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. What if he comes after me? Or Ella? Sophia placed a hand on her shoulder. He won't. Not this time. We're not alone in this anymore. Later that evening, Sophia returned to the estate. The house felt different now, less like a crypt of secrets and more like a battlefield she was determined to win. She sat in Eleanor's study, going through the remaining documents Olivia had helped uncover. Among them was a final will Eleanor had written but never filed. It explicitly named Sophia as Ella's legal guardian, bypassing any claim Daniel might have had. The next day, Monroe called Sophia to the station. We brought Daniel back in for further questioning, he said. You need to hear this. Sophia sat behind the glass as Daniel faced Monroe and another detective. He looked disheveled, his usual composure cracking under the weight of evidence against him. Your greed ruined everything, Monroe said, his voice steady but firm. You forged documents, manipulated Olivia, and lied to Sophia for years. And when Eleanor threatened to expose you, you silenced her. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes blazing. You have no proof? Monroe leaned forward, his tone dropping. We have Olivia's testimony. We have the documents. And we have the will Eleanor wrote, naming Sophia as Ella's guardian. The walls are closing in, Daniel. It's over. For a moment, Daniel's mask slipped, and a flash of fear crossed his face. But then he leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. You think you've won? You think exposing me will fix everything? You're just as guilty, Sophia. Your family built this mess, and you're just trying to clean it up with a pretty little bow. Sophia's breath caught. His words were meant to cut, to unnerve her, but they only strengthened her resolve. She stepped into the room, ignoring Monroe's startled glance. You're right, Daniel, she said, her voice calm but firm. My family made mistakes, but I'm not running from them. I'm facing them head-on. That's the difference between us. You hide behind lies, and I fight for the truth. Daniel sneered. And what truth is that? That Ella is mine. That my grandmother tried to protect her from you. And that you'll never hurt either of us again. His smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. For the first time, Sophia saw the cracks in his armor, and it gave her the strength to walk away. By the end of the week, Daniel was formally charged with fraud, conspiracy, and manslaughter. The evidence and Olivia's testimony had been enough to secure his arrest, and the town buzzed with the news of his downfall. As the dust began to settle, Sophia stood in the garden of the estate, watching Ella play among the roses. Olivia had decided to stay in Crestwood for the time being, determined to rebuild her relationship with Sophia and earn back her trust. The path forward wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Becca joined her, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. You did it, she said, handing one to Sophia. You actually took him down. Sophia smiled faintly. It wasn't just me. I had help. Becca smirked. Don't get all sentimental on me. You're still the Carter with the spine of steel. Sophia laughed softly, the sound surprising even her. For the first time in years, the weight on her chest felt lighter. She watched as Ella ran toward her, holding a freshly plucked rose. Mommy, look, Ella said, her eyes bright with joy. Sophia knelt, pulling her daughter into a hug. It's beautiful, she whispered, just like you. As she held Ella close, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the garden in a warm, golden light. For the first time, Sophia felt the promise of a future unburdened by the past, a future she was ready to embrace, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of roses, a fitting backdrop for the first day of Sophia's new life. The estate, once cloaked in secrets, now felt alive with possibility. Ella's laughter echoed through the halls as she ran down the corridors, her tiny feet pattering against the polished wood floors. In the kitchen, Sophia prepared breakfast with Olivia. Though their relationship was still fragile, there was a newfound sense of camaraderie between them. Olivia's redemption had begun, and her willingness to face the consequences of her actions had softened the edges of Sophia's lingering anger. I think Ella's starting to forgive me, Olivia said, her voice tinged with hope as she set a plate of pancakes on the table. Sophia smiled faintly. She's young. She doesn't hold grudges the way adults do. She just wants to feel loved and safe. And you're giving her that, Olivia replied, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and regret. I owe you so much more than an apology, Sophia. I'm going to prove I'm worthy of being in her life and yours. Sophia nodded, her heart softening. Let's take it one day at a time. The sound of the doorbell interrupted their conversation. Sophia wiped her hands on a dish towel and made her way to the front door. When she opened it, she found Detective Monroe standing on the porch, a thick envelope in his hand. Detective, Sophia greeted, surprised. What brings you here? I wanted to deliver this personally, Monroe said, handing her the envelope. It's the official closure report on Daniel's case. And there's something else. Sophia raised an eyebrow as she opened the envelope. Alongside the report was a smaller letter, marked with the seal of a local law firm. She glanced up at Monroe, her expression questioning. Daniel's lawyers sent it over this morning, he explained. It's a written confession. He finally broke down and admitted to orchestrating everything. The fraud, the forgeries, even his role in Eleanor's death. He named Olivia as an accomplice, but corroborated her claim that she acted out of fear. Sophia's breath hitched as she read the confession. The weight of the truth settled over her, heavy but strangely freeing. "So it's over," she murmured. "It is," Monroe said, his tone warm. "You did it, Sophia. You saw it through." After Monroe left, Sophia returned to the kitchen, the letter clutched in her hand. Olivia looked up from where she was helping Ella with her breakfast. "What is it?" she asked. "It's Daniel's confession," Sophia said, her voice steady. "He admitted everything." Olivia's face crumpled with relief, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Does this mean we can finally move on?" Sophia nodded, her gaze softening. "Yes, it's time to let go of the past." Later that afternoon, Sophia and Ella walked hand in hand through the garden, the sunlight filtering through the trees. Olivia trailed behind, her presence no longer a source of tension but of quiet support. Ella skipped ahead, her laughter a melody that filled the air. "Mommy, look," Ella called, pointing to a butterfly that had landed on a rose. "Isn't it pretty?" Sophia crouched beside her daughter, her heart swelling with love. "It's beautiful," she said softly, "just like you." As the day turned to evening, the three of them sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The estate, once a monument to pain and betrayal, now felt like a haven, a place where healing could truly begin. "I've been thinking," Sophia said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about what's next." Olivia glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "This house," Sophia said, gesturing to the sprawling estate. "It's too big for just the three of us. I want to open it up, turn it into something that can help others. Maybe a refuge for women and children who need a fresh start." Olivia smiled, a spark of admiration in her eyes. "Eleanor would have loved that." Sophia nodded. "It's what she would have wanted. A legacy worth building." As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Sophia wrapped her arms around Ella, holding her close. For the first time in years, she felt at peace. The shadows of betrayal had finally lifted, and in their place was a light brighter than she'd ever imagined. This was her new beginning.